like to tell you about the story Alice Walker wrote about um, everyday use that is about heritage and how different people view heritage. In the story that is narrated by Mama, the mother of two characters, her daughters, Dee and Maggie, we see the differences. Maggie is a homegrown girl who is African American, and she has learned everything from quilting to cooking to cleaning to embrace her heritage. Dee, on the other hand, has never embraced her heritage and somewhat rejects it throughout the story. We see her go away to college, and when her mother offers her a quilt to remember the family and her African culture, she rejects it, saying it's out of style. We see later in the story that Dee comes back and wants to reconnect to her culture because being black has become in style. We see the fashion and differences as she returns with her African clothes and her African jewelry. She even adopts an African name called Wangaro because to her, Dee is a name given to her by her white oppressors. Mama says that she can trace the name Dee back past the Civil War, and Dee dismisses it. Dee comes back to collect different relics of the African American culture. The butter churn and the seats and even the quilts. The quilt is one of the most culturally significant pieces that she wants to take because it includes so many stories and memories. Some of the stories and memories can include like the scarf that Grandma wore when she went to town, and another one, maybe the shirt that Grandpa wore when he was in the war, and another scarf, maybe from Mom, when she used to tell me bedtime stories. The purpose of the quilt was to be able to take all of these memories and put them into one piece of fabric that you could tell stories with to your future generations. They would wear the clothes for as long as possible. Sometimes it would pass through 3 or 4 generations before it was completely worn through and almost threadbare. Then they would take what they could salvage from the clothing and put it into a quilt. In the story, she wants to take these because she believes that heritage is something you can display on a wall and show off to your friends. Wangaro doesn't understand that heritage is something you live with rather than something you can just display. And Houston and Charlotte Baker say this by saying that she only displays it when it's fashionable. Wangaro also decides to embrace her African culture rather than her African American culture, which are two completely different things when you think about it. She is African American, and she knows she is, but she completely rejects it. She doesn't want anything to do with it. It almost embarrasses her. Her African culture is something she basically made up. She doesn't officially know that she's African and those are her roots, and Wangaro has nothing to do with her African American culture. She just kind of made it up and adopted it because it sounded cool and it made her feel more important. Dee wants to erase her past and get rid of everything that represents her family and, get rid of it. The quilting also happened a lot throughout the entire community. So neighbors and family members and everyone would get together and make big quilts so they could all help each other out and have a really closely knitted community. Wangaro decided to cut out that community, which also included her own family, but she wanted to keep the quilts and all the other things like the butter churn and the benches because she felt that they were more important to make her home look pretty than to her family that was using those things every day. Wangaro was embarrassed by everything her family ever did. David Coart said that real African cultures use everything, so if the item didn't have a purpose, then it wasn't, or an everyday use, it wasn't African. So the entire quest of Dee was to rip all of the heritage from Maggie and Mama's home and to claim the quilts and to reject all of her culture. Therefore, growing more selfish and just becoming completely fake because she has no actual culture left. She's not African and she doesn't want to be African American, so there's nothing left. We realize near the end of the story that Maggie is the true keeper of all of the history and all of the culture within her family because she's the one who knows how to quilt. So she can not only tell the stories of the history in the family, she can add to them and make it more and add more to her future generations. So the sources I found were this one from the library sources and this one. Alright. The real theme is the meaning of heritage and how Dee rejects everything and doesn't actually embrace her heritage. It's more about how Maggie embraces her heritage. It's not about a happy story of Dee coming home and reclaiming her heritage. It's about her completely rejecting it and Maggie becoming the true holder.